Right. Hello. So I wanted to do a video and just give a sort of rundown of what we've done in the van so far. So I've obviously explained we're a year and a half into the build. Now, I mean, we're a year more than that now. We are now in April. Obviously, we were hoping to have a lot more of the van finished by now, but we are at the stage where we're putting walls and a ceiling in next, so we're pretty much there. Everything else is more, look and feel and vibe of the van. So all the fundamentals have been done. We're pretty much there with, the base of the van. Now we're moving on to the fun stuff. So I just wanted to take you guys through what it is we've done so far, how we did it, what we used, and then what we're doing next. I have got all the products and things that I've used listed in the website I've created, which will probably be linked in the description. There are other van life or van conversion accounts that we follow. We found it incredibly useful to watch a certain video, see something they've used and thought, oh, that would really work for what we're doing, and then be able to go and either go through the link that they've put on their videos or through a sort of store that they've created of everything they've used. So we've done the same thing. So if there's anything you've seen that you're like, we want to do that too, you can find that on the little website that we've made that's basically got all the products and all the stuff that we've used all linked. Not all of them are affiliate links. I think most of them, unless it's Amazon, it's not an affiliate link because it cannot be asked to sign up to the other affiliate programs that are out there because there's just too many of them, and we just want to help anyone that's doing the van conversion in the way that others have helped us do it as well. So we've learned to do this whole conversion through reading the van conversion Bible, which I'll also link below. Also YouTube. All of the YouTubers that we follow and videos that we've watched has helped us do this van conversion. We have no experience in doing this, never done it before. The most I've ever done DIY is actually built a bench, which involves 4 pieces of wood and a solid piece of wood on the top of it, so not very experienced. So anyway, let's get cracking. So the first thing we did with the van was strip it bare. Now, I think I need to say, in all honesty, when you buy a van, if you just start converting it and don't come up against any mechanical or body problems, you are one of the lucky ones. I don't know many people, or haven't seen many, that haven't had some sort of issue with the van itself before moving on to actually converting it. So, for example, when I first bought this van, I bought it from an auction. It was a delivery vehicle for, I want to say, a drinks company. I don't know which drinks company, but basically the ply lining on the floor was rotten and it was like falling apart. When I took it up, which you can see in some of the faster videos, or maybe I'll put it up here, it was just not coming up very well. It was splitting. I was hoping to use it as a template, but because it was coming apart so badly, I actually couldn't figure out what went where. So I wanted to make sure, before putting a lot of effort into it, that the van was as good as it could be mechanically and body-wise. When I stripped out all the ply lining, there was quite a bit of rust in places. It was filthy as hell. So, cleaned it out, tried to get rid of all the rust, treated the rust, and then used Hammerite white metal paint then to paint over everything and make sure it was pretty solid. So I would, when you first start your van conversion, I would recommend that you look into the mechanics of the van and make sure that it's working right. There's nothing majorly wrong with it at that time. You check around all the body. There's no major issues or potential for massive rust to start growing or spreading. You just want to make sure that your base of the van is solid, as solid as can be for what you want it for. So that was the first thing. So yeah, So once I was happy with the mechanics of the van and the general body of the van being as sufficient as it could be, and that included getting rid of all the rust, painting it, cleaning it, checking it over everywhere, stripping it completely, taking out the bulkhead, taking out all the ply lining, the floor, stripping it back to just metal. Once we were happy, I started with actually converting the van itself. So first thing I did was put some sound deadening on the panels, because without the bulkhead it was really, really loud to drive, and the sound deadening did make quite a big difference. I think I only put 20% spread on the panels, so depending on how big the metal panel is, I was making sure I was covering about 20% of that panel. Same with the wheel arches. I actually did 2 strips along the sides of the wheel arches because that seemed to help with the vibration noise better than covering them entirely, and obviously wanted to use as little as possible because when it got delivered I realised that the sound deadening was actually quite heavy, so you didn't want to use too much. So I did the sound deadening. Thing I wanted to do was the swivel seat. So this was a job I actually wasn't keen on doing myself and wasn't looking forward to, so I decided to tackle it pretty early on, and I'm glad I did because it was a very frustrating process. So the plate at the bottom, there's a bottom plate and a top plate, and that's obviously how it spins around with this piece in the middle. Now, if you don't get the bottom plate completely flat and it bends ever so slightly when you secure it in place, it does not work. So not only will these secure screws not go in place, it won't actually turn around. So I'll give it a quick turn around now so you can see. Bingo. So it's a bit of a job because obviously it's a big seat, as it being a double swivel seat, but once it's there and you're camping out, it's a really big, nice, good seat to have to swivel, but it's not the easiest because it's quite large and there's not a lot of space to move it around. So anyway, okay, so then after doing the sound deadening and the swivel base seat, which also, by the way, I recommend 2 people do it because the plate itself is really, really heavy, and also to tighten it to make it really, really secure, quite difficult. So it's just nice to have someone help you do that job. Highly recommend. Did it on my own, was not fun. I actually did ask for some help when it came to readjusting the plate when the first round did not go well. So anyway, just take it this way. So the next thing we started doing was the flooring. So I had an old bed frame from the house I'd moved out from, and yeah, you want to save money where you can. So I tore the bed frame apart and used the wood inside it for the floor battens. So they were 2x4s. They were, I thought, big enough. And when I looked at all the materials I was going to use, I wanted to make the flooring as thin as possible, even though I wanted it really well insulated, but as thin as possible so that when we do the ceiling, we can still stand upright. And I am 5 foot, well, I'm just under 5'7", as I mentioned before. And so I have got a bit of distance currently, but once we've put the ceiling on, there's not going to be that much give. So, it was really important to be able to stand up in here because that's why I got high roof van, was for the standing up element. So if I have to start crouching, then completely defeats the object. So making the floor as thin as possible but as well insulated as possible was the target. So I used the 2x4s. I then I tried to make it so that the battens were in areas where there would be significant weight, so that the wood would support the ply lining on top, and obviously the insulation as well, which I'll get into a bit more detail because that did not go well the first time. So we initially bought urethane insulation boards They were just a little bit too thick for the 2x4s that we'd put down. Obviously, with the 2x4s, the made up the depth of the flooring were initially there, so then the insulation needed to be 2 as well, but it wasn't. It was ever so slightly bigger, and so when we were putting the next layer on top, which was the 12mm plywood, it wasn't even touching the wood battens underneath. It was just sitting on the thermaline, the urethane insulation, so it didn't work. It actually raised it significantly, which I just wasn't expecting. Obviously got no experience with any insulation, so I learned the hard way with that. Ended up completely throwing it, and it was like 120 quid for 2 of those sheets of urethane insulation. So don't make that mistake. Measure, make sure it all fits in correctly. I'm sure others do. I did not. We ended up replacing it with the Dodo Thermaliner insulation, version 3 from Dodo Mat. That I've actually used throughout the entire van build. So you can see it's in the panels here, it's up there. That stuff has been amazing. And so yeah, we used it for the floor as well. Next piecing of the flooring was the 12mm plywood. So I used a little tool that I've got, which you'll see on the website. It's linked to the website. I used the little tool to make sure that we had all of the grooves, and then we could solder it in place. So we used 2 big sheets of 12mm cut, and then there was a tiny piece that we needed to use for the back. I then managed to find some spare laminate flooring in my parents' garage, which sounds very posh. Garage. Not sure what accent I'm using. So in my parents' garage, there was some spare laminate, so I decided to see if there was enough to use it for in here, and lo and behold, there was. It wasn't the best quality, obviously, because it's 20 years old, but it did do the job. And we're going to have a carpet in here. It's going to get quite a bit of wear and tear on the excursions that we're going to do, so I'm not that precious about the floor getting ruined, considering it was free. But yeah, it'll have some protection on it anyway, and I've tried to treat it so that it lasts for a while. To finish off the flooring, then, once we'd cut all the laminate into the pieces that we needed to spread it out as much as possible, we've then cut some thresholds. I had to do 2 very unique pieces for each end of the door. Excuse the mess. To keep it in place and to fit in between the rubber seals, and then to fit in this piece of threshold as well. So, and the piece that this threshold has been cut from, we've used on the back doors as well. So the next thing we did after finishing the flooring was insulation. So we have insulated using 12mm Thermaliner insulation from Dodo Mat all along the outside of the van. Any panel that's essentially touching the outside of the van, if we can reach it, we have covered it in this stuff. It has proven, even just having that and staying in the van at 10 degrees, it made quite the difference. So I was imagining, once it's finished, it's going to be really pretty nice and warm in here. So I recommend putting in that time and effort to do a good job of that initial insulation, spreading it around and making sure it's, covering as much of the van as possible, so it makes it warm in here. And again, you can see all the fast videos that I've done on how much of that Thermaliner I've put all over the place. It's absolutely everywhere. So the next step after that was the sliding door window. We did that together, which actually wasn't as difficult as we thought it would be. The bit that probably surprised me was when you're putting the sealant on. We didn't warm it up beforehand, so it was incredibly difficult to get out the tube. So if you're installing a window, or a side window in particular, and it comes with the black sealant stuff, that's got to be pretty thick when you put it on. I would just highly recommend putting it in some hot water first, so it warms up, so it's a bit more liquidy and it comes out and it's easier to put on, because one was squeezing it and the other was guiding it. It was so hard to get out. So highly just recommend putting that in some hot water. The other thing is just to make sure that the bead is even. We clearly didn't do an even bead on the top right, and so the first time it rained it did start leaking from the top right, and we ended up using a different sealant to put in on the outside of the window to then stop any further leaks. So definitely use some definitely try and get the bead even the whole way around. Otherwise, cutting the hole out, was very daunting to start with, because it's really loud and doesn't feel like you should be cutting it with a jigsaw. It was fine, you sort of get into the groove of it, and we cut holes the whole way around with our drill and then sort of went for it, and it was fine. But obviously you need a big enough hole to get the jigsaw in, which is also a little bit difficult at times, but it was fine. Once you've done it, it feels great. So I'm just laying on the top bed. So the next step after that was the fixed bed. So we decided we wanted a fixed bed because we don't really like having to put things up and down if we can avoid it. I don't like making the bed as it is, so having to pull the bed out, make the bed, and then go to bed just seemed like a lot. Plus with a fixed bed you can make the bed a lot higher, which makes for greater storage under the bed, which we kind of wanted because the dog area is actually going to be under the bed as well, so they need a little bit of height to get in there, as they are whippets. So the bed frame for this Ford Custom was fairly straightforward, because there are holes along the whole sides of the back here, and so all I did was used a tool that I've got, which is a rivet gun, and we used M8 bolts then to put through this thick piece of wood, which I want to say it's 18 mil. So this is a 12 mil, and then it's got a small 6 mil piece of wood behind there, I think, because that's 9. So yeah, I want to say this equates to 18 mil. That's an 18 mil just there, and it feels around the same size. So yeah, 18 millimeters of wood along the back here. Again, that actually came from the old bed frame that I had, so it was perfect sort of size. I didn't have to trim it down too much. But we put 5 M8 bolts straight into the metal of the van through the rivet gun, through the rivet bolts, and it's been incredibly strong. I can see why obviously other people recommend doing it. It's worked really well. It's had the two of us sleeping on it, jumping up and down, and it's no signs of moving at all. It did put a bit of No More Nails glue behind there as well when we fixed it in, more because when you're driving it squeaks a little bit. So without the mattress it squeaks anyway. I think more because the Scrover bed beams kind of make a noise, but it's a lot quieter when the mattress is on it, and I think that is because of the glue. So same with the framing. When you're putting framing or wood in, the glue just makes it a bit more flexible, makes it less noisy and less squeaky. So I recommend that. So the rest of the bed frame is 3 Scrover beams from IKEA. They were 20 quid each. Really, really good quality because they're really, really strong and lightweight. And then we ordered just some normal, I don't even know, I've forgotten what it's called. Bed slats? Yeah, bed slats. Ordered some normal bed slats from Amazon, which have got the little fabric that keep them spaced out evenly in between. They were too long, so we just cut them down to side and one end, and then I drilled them into place using self-tapping screws through into the metal. And actually it's been really handy because the self-tapping screws have gone through the middle of the Scrover beams, which then has kept this piece of wood, which the electric sits on, in place by going through in the middle. So not planned, but very handy. And then we fixed obviously this board into this beam with some M6 bolts as well, so keeps it all nicely in place. Bed frame's pretty straightforward. It's probably my favourite bit to do because it actually started to look like a camper van once the bed was in, and it was a lot nicer to stop sleeping on the floor whenever I was staying in it, because the bottom of the mattress gets wet because of condensation, no air ventilation, whereas now bone dry. It's wonderful. Oh, yep. Oh, not how I want to get out there. One of the next things we did then, it wasn't actually the skylight. The skylight came a little bit later, but we did the uni struts on the roof. So I can take you up there and just give you a little look. Ow. Turns out my face and the camera doesn't fit up there together, so one at a time. So obviously you've got solar panels up here now, but you can see the uni struts on the side. So we installed these, and then yeah, the solar panels now sit on them, which is great. It's a shame we can't have a decking up here, but you know, can't have it all. Now we're on to my favourite part. Framing. So framing was probably the part of this process I was dreading the most. And the reason for it is because after I did loads of research on van conversion videos and, you know, materials and stuff, I realised a lot of the vans people pick are pretty boxy. Now, I picked a Ford Custom, firstly because it was what came up in auction for a really reasonable price. It was really low mileage and it was a decent year. It's a 2016 but registered in 2017. So it sort of met the criteria of lasting a long time. What I didn't realise was that the body of a Custom to self-convert is quite difficult because it's not very boxy. So I change the position. So we've had to split out how we're going to be putting the walls in. So there's different sections. So the cabinet is actually going to be on this section to this to this to possibly that. So the ceiling will come as far as there, and then these will be used to secure the upper cabinets. We've cut the wood being used for the framing for the top and bottom, so it can be put on separately. Now, we have used 9mm plywood, which is pretty thin, pretty bendy itself. It's been great for bending to the roof shape, but it wasn't quite enough for the shape of the walls. So a lot of the pieces that come down to this middle section have been cut so that they can go on flat here and then flat further down to the rest of the body. What we have found is when we put walls in, we'll have to do a large piece for here and then another piece for down there, kind of like we've done for the framing itself anyway. The other thing we found with the funny shape is that we can utilize the space behind. So we've created a storage box here, a storage box underneath, and there's another storage box here which hasn't been fixed in yet. It kind of comes out, but obviously we will fix it in place. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about with the framing was the wall that we've created. So if you can see behind me, there is now a wall in place. So this is going to act as our closet, as well as a shelf and a wall that will separate the driver cab area to what will be a seating area / hopefully toilet if we can fit it, because obviously we do have a diesel heater down here, so it's got to fit around what we want in that area. But yeah, we did create this wall using the 9mm plywood up here for the top base, and then using some thicker wood for sort of structural piece down the side here and on the floor. But essentially, if I put the seat forward a bit, bear with me. If you see Miranda, you know. Bear with. So you can see you've got a nice space behind the driver's seat. So the idea is that we'll hang our clothes or hang our coats behind here. So we'll get some hooks in this section here. Might even put some hooks down the side here, depending, obviously, because they can be quite high up and out of the way. Maybe in the front as well. I don't know. We'll see. But essentially, this is going to be where our closet is. We'll hang our coats in here. Our shoes can go down there. There's a bit of electrics going on down there for the DC to DC charger, which we'll go into another day. But yeah, it's a nice little space hidden away, and because of where the coat or the thick piece of wood is here, we've been able to use thinner pieces and some No More Nails glue to create this shelf, which has turned into kind of like a double shelf area. So if we could always put something on here, maybe a little lip there again, I don't know. It's fun to just see how it develops depending on what you have access to and what you can build. Because the other part of this, as much as we've spent quite a lot of money on this build, there's been a lot of things that we've just utilized because we have it and tried to make it work based on the tools we have and the materials we have. So that's the other fun thing about it. Obviously, if it's appropriate, then it's fun to just try and solve some of the problems that you come up against. But it doesn't always work, and you just got to be prepared for, if it doesn't work, to be like, okay, out the window that goes, move on to the next solution. So the next things I was going to get onto was the electrics and the diesel heater, but I think I might save this for a video another day. I can give you a quick taster, which essentially is, the diesel heater down here, which is all plumbed in there, the electrics that come out from this section here and up there. We've also got lights, and there's actually a switch here, so if I press this, I think you'll actually see, yeah, we've got some electrics going on already. That turns it off, which is brilliant. We've also got some electrics come out there, under here in the garage area, so got electrics going across there, going through one of the middle beams, and then we've got all the electrics going on down here. But we'll do a separate video on how we did the electrics, what setup we've got, and how we've done it. So definitely save that for another day, because that's a whole video in itself. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed learning about our process so far. We started in July 2024. We're now in April 2026. You can definitely get this conversion done a lot quicker than that, but the time it's taken us to do this conversion has meant we've been able to save as we go, build as we go, stay in it, and actually learn from what we found to be quite enjoyable in the van. Stay tuned for the electrics and the next stages of the van build. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please do let us know, and you can check out all the materials and products that we've used in the little website that we built. So yeah, I'm tired now. Okay, bye.